Actually, it was my sister Zella, cellist, um,
Oh.
who was living in New York City at the time. I was in Atlanta playing with Atlanta Symphony. And Zella and Maxine Roach were very good friends. They worked a lot together in New York City. Zella was in New York Philharmonic, and then she
Mm.
also did some work in the city, recording work and whatnot. Um, and Maxine was very active, of course, in New York City. And so they became fast friends. And as Max is forming the Uptown String Quartet, they needed another violinist. So Zella encouraged Maxine and Max to call me in Atlanta. So I get the call, and I hate to admit it, but at the time I didn't even know who Max Roach was.
Oh my gosh.
Shh, don't tell anyone. But I quickly learned.
Yeah.
And they said, we're premiering actually the double quartet, which was Max's quartet
Mm.
with drums, bass, trumpet, and saxophone
Right.
combined together with Uptown String Quartet.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't we weren't quite Uptown String Quartet at that point. It was the double quartet.
Okay, okay.
Um, and they were premiering the group at the Blue Note in New York
Oh,
City.
cool.
So I said, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." And I just happened to have the week off from the orchestra, Atlanta Symphony at the time. So I went to New York, all ready to go. They sent me the music in advance. I went, oh my, yeah. There was a tune that was written for us by Cecil Bridgewater, trumpet player
Mm.
at the time, called Bird Says. And it's kind of a quote, it was a very much bebop kind of tune with bebop lines and everything. I had never played bebop, and I was just like horrified.
Terrified.
And I remember walking into rehearsal studios here in New York, very famous Carol Studios.
Okay.
And that was the first thing out of my mouth was, his bird says first? Oh, just freaked out. So we rehearsed, and then we had a week of the Blue Note. And it was just like I had stepped into something I had always dreamed of.
Mm.
So we did, for a couple years, the double quartet did a few things, and I was involved. And then my tenure with Atlanta ended, and I moved on. And about that time is when Max decided that the quartet needed to be, Uptown String Quartet needed to be its own entity. And he, I think, got a record deal for us. So he wanted to put this quartet together in a more formal way. And so Zella, at that point, left for Europe to pursue a career in symphonic world in Europe.
Mm.
And Germany, she was in Germany, and then she went to France and was there for almost 30 years
Wow.
as a principal cellist.
Mm.
Zella was bad.
Mm.
It's an incredible player. And I was in Nashville, but then my job there ended. The orchestra went belly up. So
God.
I said, okay, New York, here I come.
Mm.
So I just, boom, was another one of those moments. I changed direction.
Yeah.
And I went to New York. I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything. But I just went. I just had a feeling that, So the quartet started, and we did our first album, and it hit like crazy. People were really amazed by what we were doing.
Mm.
And it landed us on the cover of Strings magazine, which is Strad magazine, excuse me.
Oh,
Both
wow.
Strings magazine and Strad magazine, which is a gigantic, very prestigious magazine in the string world, Strad magazine. And so suddenly here's a string quartet of 4 black women,
Yeah.
and people go, this is really interesting. And in the process, Max began to encourage us to start writing our own material. And, again, it was like, what, huh? We string players don't do that. What? At least at that time.
Right.
So he had several people that he knew, like Jimmy Heath and Cecil Bridgewater and Bill Lee, who is
Late father
late
of
father of
Spike Lee.
Spike Lee.
Yeah.
That's right, right. And Bill wrote the most beautiful 2 songs for us. One is called Remembering. I should bring you the CD so you can hear it. It's real beautiful.
It's on that first record, right?
Uptown. Is it?
Max Roach Presents.
I think so.
I
Yes.
have it. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, I know those. I know those
just
tracks.
beautiful writing,
Amazing.
and we began to learn how to write. I think Eileen, the cellist at the time, wrote the first compositions, and Eileen was brilliant. She's no longer with us.
Mm.
Brilliant player, brilliant writer. Very, she was a jokester in the group. Subtle, quiet, but like quiet. So what do you call that? She'd blow up the joint. I mean,
Yeah.
she'd play, and it would be just like some of her solos on "Along Came Betty," a piece by Benny Golson,
Yeah.
were just, harmonically difficult, but she would navigate her way through, not only walking the bass line, but soloing as well in a way that was just powerful and beautiful.
Mm. Mm. Okay, and I just want to ask like a last question about the Uptown String Quartet. I wonder, I mean, very generally, and answer this however you want, would you mind reflecting on what some of the quartet's goals were and some of your creative processes that were at play to create that music?
It's a very deep question. At the time, I don't think we really had any goals. We were just trying to keep up with the challenge that was put before us. But we eventually learned that we were on a trajectory that was new, exciting, and also necessary, especially when we landed the interview and cover for Strad magazine, because it was saying to the world essentially, because it is an international magazine. Here we are, and there's no denying what Uptown String Quartet is here to do, and that's to change the perception of what a string quartet can be, both from the perspective of race and also from the perspective of for women doing it and holding their own as composers, as artistic visionaries, as women who could speak boldly about who we are and what we've been and what we were becoming. And it's so interesting to me now, young string players that have come to Los Angeles to work and are doing very, very well, come to me and say, I listened to Uptown String Quartet growing up.
Wow.
And it changed my life.
Wow.
And gave me the ability to imagine something similar for myself. And at first I'm like, oh man, so that means I'm old. But then what I realize is that is a tremendous compliment. Because at the time we didn't know we were doing that.
And I've actually heard that from a string player too.
We didn't know we were doing that. But now looking back, I understand that. And it's necessary, it's important. Each generation will have what they have and then have to pass it to the next, And to be able to pass that legacy along is not only a gift, but a tremendous sense of accomplishment. And, just like everybody else, we were not perfect in what we were doing necessarily. We were afraid, we were frightened because it was so new and different. But as I said, also necessary. So the situation presented itself, and really the only thing to do was to say, yes, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And it was for a season. We were together about 10 years. And then due to several situations, some members decided to go in another way. And I held a lot of regret about that, because I loved the quartet and I loved what we were doing. But I also understand it was necessary at the time, you know. And so as we come back together in November,
Yeah.
it will be interesting to see. We've already in conversation, you know, on Zoom, talking about preparation for this. I already see a shift, you know, in each person's voice and strength within the quartet, and bringing our authentic selves to the work, you know, to say something again that's really important. And pushing the boundary. Again, we're not only just playing some of the things we've done from the past, but we're also incorporating new work, and working with a Native American woman, which was a request and desire on the part of Maxine Roach to work in that capacity because the area where we're playing is heavily populated by Native culture. So we're this wonderful artist, singer, and she's many things. She's a dancer as well. Will join us, and we will, as I said recently to them, construct and then deconstruct maybe popular things that relate to the story of Native culture in this country alongside African American culture. And it was funny, the response. They were the rest of the quartet members were thought it was a good idea, but then they quickly said, in their very Uptown String Quartet way, listen to Lesa, she's being all deep about it. So, you know, we build each other up and then we can smack each other down, but in a loving way. It's like, you know, keeping the humor in it and finding the joy in the creation of these things, you know, because it's a really heavy subject when you start dealing with Native culture too, and the atrocities there and what you want to show in the music. But where's the joy as women coming together to do this? Let's also magnify that as well. And it's cutting edge, and we're changing it up again, you know. So like the river that flows, you know, it sort of has the same path, but all the ripples and all the waves and ripples change. They're different, you know. So we follow that path as well, if I can say it in that way.